What is up, RotoGrinders? Dean here. I am not Brit. Brit Devine is away on vacation. He'll be back next week. This is the Prime Point Show, week number 7, joined by Graham Barfield, as always, as well as Jake Tribbey. Graham and Jake, thank you for letting me jump in and join your show. Going to be fun. Looking forward to it. I've not usually I wait until Wednesday to fully dive in. It's a Tuesday night, so it's a little bit early for me as far as diving in on NFL on Tuesday. And, of course, a lot can change, but we're going to do our best to cover, DFS, some sports betting, some prize picks, some underdog, a little bit of everything. Jake, welcome to the show. Thanks for letting me jump on here and play the role of Brit.
Yeah, we're super glad to have you. Had some technical difficulties this week or last week, so I'm sure this week we'll get significantly better. But yeah, just excited to be back. Excited to talk some ball with two really great sports minds.
Yeah, we're going to do our best to talk about how excited we are as far as week 7. We were talking about a little bit pre-show. It's the old lipstick on a pig, however you want to say it, but it's pretty rough. Chicken salad slate, a 10-game main slate. A lot of teams on bye, 6 teams on bye this week. Carolina, Cincinnati, Dallas, Houston, the Jets, the Titans. The most fun, the greatest game on the board is not even on the main slate for DFS. We'll be watching on Sunday night, Miami versus Philadelphia. But yeah, Graham, we're going to do our best to have fun and get some winners for the people and break down some angles for week number 7. Welcome to the show as well.
Yeah, man. Good to do a show with you. This is awesome. Yeah, this is a really brutal 1 p.m. slate. Like all the games have totals under 42. 4 of the 6 games have totals like under 39. I mean, this is like a week 18 early slate, just brutal. And then on top of that, we have like so many injury notes. So we're gonna, like you said, we're gonna try our best for this show. There is a couple of spots that I think we're all in on. So yeah, should be fun.
Do you have Graham? Do you have any data as far as why points are down this season? They are down, right? I feel like I've heard this. I've seen this. At least totals are down as well. The biggest total on the board, at least as far as the main slate's 48.5. There are 4 totals under 39.5 or under 40 at least. What's is there something we can point to? Is it small sample stuff? We have 6 weeks. Why are points down? Why can't we find 32 competent quarterbacks? There are 7 billion people on the planet. Why can't we do this? Why can't we figure this out? What's the issue?
Yeah, it's a lot of different things. So this week, just broadly, the average total is 42.5. That is like really, really low. In general, it's usually around 45. So just right off the bat, we're already seeing, 2.5 point decline. Last week, there was only, I think, 43 offensive touchdowns on Sunday, which is one of the lowest we've ever seen on a Sunday. Obviously, had a couple of teams out on bye. I think it's a number of different things. I think some of it is like there's actually 6 to 7 really good defenses right now. Dallas, Cleveland, Buffalo, right off the top. I mean, some really, really good defenses that are actually ones to be afraid of. Jake, you and I say this every single year, but like there's usually only a few to be afraid of, but like there's now like multiple. The Niners are great. Lions look like they're really coming on. So like there's 8 to 9 strong defenses, 6 to 7 really good ones. And then we were talking pre-show. I mean, the Chiefs are a team that we were always betting on to have explosive plays. Those have been completely zapped just by personnel in their offenses. So, it's a long way to say. I think this year though, there's some definite signal to say that defenses are in general better. And, unlike in previous years where maybe there were 2 to 3 matchups that we were afraid of every single week, like I think that's doubled now. So I think that's it in a nutshell. And then you mix in this week, man, there's so many quarterback injuries. Jimmy Garoppolo might not play this week. The Bears are going to be going to Badgett, I think, again. So, man, I mean, it's a rough week 7 for sure. Feels like week 18.
Can I make a confession? I've never heard of Tyson Badgett ever until I saw him trot out last week. And I watch a lot of the football. Yeah. And by the way, does anybody know, top of the dome, what college he went to? Because I never heard of him. You guys know? You guys college guys? I didn't know this college existed, for the record. Shepherd.
No, I have
Shepherd College. Anybody?
Yeah. Oh.
Anybody,
Was he a that's D2, right? Yeah.
I don't know. Shepherd University, I guess it is, but I think it's in West Virginia. But again, this is not me showing off. This is just me using the Google. I was like, I never heard of this person, and he's probably going to be quarterbacking once again. That's probably part of it too, right? Injuries and the talent pool for quarterbacks taking a big hit as well. Jake, if you have a thought on that, by all means, feel free to add to that conversation. But general takeaways, from week 6, what do you have for the people?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think Graham really hit the nail on the head in regards to scoring. I know that we talked about that a little bit before our week 1 show, because that's been a continuous trend here. And a few things that I just wanted to add was that we've seen the most efficient rushing attacks in NFL history over these last few years. I mean, the league peaked all time in yards per carry at 4.5 last season, and I think the ground game just gets more and more effective as defenses go towards more. 2 high safeties, which forces shorter throws. We've seen that a lot, especially with the team like Kansas City, who really isn't throwing downfield much anymore. It's just a lot of motion, a lot of trying to set their guys up in space. And you combine that with teams going a little more run heavy, especially with the increase in rushing quarterbacks. I think it makes sense the scoring's down, and it might be a trend that we continue to see over the next few years, unfortunately. My takeaways beyond that, though, Bengals had the highest pass rate over expectation of the season in week 6. We knew Joe Burrow was back, but this is, pretty extreme levels of back for Joe Burrow. Last year, they also ramped up their pass rate massively, had a double-digit pass rate over expectation in 8 of their final 12 games. Joe Burrow averaged 25.7 fantasy points per game in those contests. That probably means Jamar Chase is undervalued, but it definitely means going forward that T. Higgins will be undervalued, especially for DFS. Mm-hmm. He's going to come in way too cheap off of the injury. And I don't know if people are going to be super anxious to play him, but I know I will with Burrow chucking the ball this much. And then beyond that, this Cowboys rushing attack is just fundamentally broken right now. Tony Pollard with just 2 yards per carry last night against PFF's second worst graded run defense. He's 51st right now of 53 qualifiers in missed tackles forced per attempt. And that's a stat that Tony Pollard has always crushed in. It makes me wonder if, the broken leg that he suffered in the playoffs against San Francisco last year, is drastically impacting his efficiency. I know some people on Twitter might say, oh, it's because of the larger workload, but this just isn't the Tony Pollard of old. This, we're looking at a different guy, it seems like.
That's actually what I was going to say. I was going to be the person on Twitter saying, I'm not sure what it is. I was going to ask, and maybe the increased role should take a hit as far as the efficiency, asking him to touch the ball 20, 25 times. But that is really, really weird to see as far as Pollard. And I guess he was kind of bailed out last night by that screen that went for, I guess it wasn't even a screen. It was just kind of a scramble play, a 60, 70 yarder or so on the reception end. But all right. I have a takeaway. I'm going to hold mine for a second. It's not actually, you know what? I'll fire it off. It's not really actionable this week because
fire off
Houston,
the take, Cannon Dean.
Yeah.
That's what we're
Houston,
here for.
Houston is on bye. And so I just had this general thought. You guys remember where all of us, speaking of Twitter was dunking on Houston. They blew the number 1 pick by beating Indianapolis in a completely worthless game last year. And, rightfully so. Like, what are you doing? Lose the game, tank the game. And, even they scored in the last play, the very last play. Just take a knee. Let's have some fun with it. But no, they go out there, they score a touchdown, and they lose the number 1 pick. And that's the best thing that happened to that organization because they did not have the right to draft Bryce Young, and they fell into C.J. Stroud. And C.J. Stroud, man, he looks legit. He's the guy there in Houston the next 5 or 10 years. And, these teams, it takes 15, 20, 25 years for some organizations to find, this is our quarterback. This is our guy. This guy's got a chance to crack the top 5 for quarterbacks the next so many years. And, shout out to Houston. And this has not even to do with what's happened with Watson, what a disaster he's become so far. But the organization, what a massive step forward, kind of fell into it. But sometimes, silver lining, it just sort of works out. I don't know where they were at as far as Stroud versus Young. Who knows? But
yeah,
that's just amazing. I think where Houston is positioned going forward, Stroud is, I assume, do you agree? Are you on top of that, Graham, as far as you think Stroud's just like he's going to be a guy in the league for the next 10 years and possibly top 5 quarterback?
Yeah, we've been all over that. I think Jake and I've been betting Texans all year, and I think in general it's a really interesting thing. So like you said, the Texans, yes, should have lost Week 18. The Panthers, I think they wanted Stroud, man. I think Reich wanted Stroud. Yeah. The betting markets had Stroud as like the heavy favorite in March. I think Reich wanted Stroud. I think the new coaching staff wanted Stroud, and then their owner came in. The Panthers owner came in and wanted Bryce Young, and that's. Texans ended up with Stroud. They ended up with the best quarterback in the draft, even though they lost Week 18 or won Week 18, typically losing the first pick. It's just wild how this has all turned out. Not to say Bryce can't turn it around. Obviously he can. He's very talented. But Stroud, man, he's checked all the boxes from Week 1. It's been phenomenal from him.
Wasn't there like an insinuation? Was it Reich that kind of implied like what you're saying here as far as the owner essentially stepped in Kind of threw him under the bus. He's very hands-on. I can't remember the phrasing he used. I remember seeing the quote, and there was an implication that, like, and not great for the locker room. Like, we don't really, if only we'd have taken my guy.
I saw that press conference. Reich looked defeated. He was like, yeah, this is like, he just wants, he wants a lot of input. He's very, he's very opinionated. So yeah, it's a little bit of a mess in Carolina. That's for sure. Houston, on the other hand, like you said, Houston has a legitimate chance to be a really good competitor in the AFC South for a long time, just because they nailed Stroud,
Yeah. Yeah. And they backdoored it, however you want to say it. They got him. That's all that matters, I suppose, scoreboard.
Yeah.
Graham, what do you have as far as your takeaway this week?
Yeah, 2 quick takeaways for me. We're trying to find good running back plays. And this week there's just been so many injuries, and a lot of teams are shifting towards more committees. Meanwhile, Ken Walker is just consolidating out of the bye. He's consolidating touches out of the bye. I kind of thought maybe they'd get Zach Charbonnet, the rookie, a little more involved. No, didn't happen. Ken Walker's 75% snap rate out of the bye, season high. I think big thing for him, and the big question we had for him going into the season is whether or not he would get all the red zone work. And he has that in spades. He has 16 carries inside the 10. Tony Pollard is the only running back with more at 17. Last year, Walker only had 16 carries inside the 10 the entire season. So to me, this week, Walker is another really, really strong play. I was on him last week. Didn't have a huge ceiling game against the Bengals. That second half kind of died. And I think we're going to talk more about Isaiah Pacheco in the DFS segment, but he's consolidating too, man. I mean, and he has so much upside in this Chiefs offense. I'll save the Pacheco talk for the DFS segment, because I think we're all in on him at 6,100. But yeah, Walker and Pacheco to me, stand out as 2 plays. Just it's Tuesday, but 2 plays that are really strong at running back right now.
You're talking about Walker, by the way. Just a general thought. They're coming out of the bye there in Seattle, and we saw, I'm pretty sure JSN got a big increase as far as his,
he did,
but as part of that, the other part is how much that had to do with Metcalf getting hurt. And then a deeper conversation is, I guess we'll kind of dig into it later, maybe 2 teams coming off by it's Pittsburgh and Green Bay. Do we expect anything drastic? General rules, like some teams do it, some teams don't, but a lot of times that's when teams will make, organizational changes. Are you expecting anything as far as those 2 teams shifting coming out of the bye?
Yeah, every team is a little different. That's why I was interested to see what Charbonnet's role would be. JSN actually finally got some downfield targets last week. His ADOT was like the lowest in the NFL besides Kadarius Toney going into that game. So it was good to see him kind of get a few more downfield targets. I think the Packers might move on from AJ Dillon. Like that would be my hot take. Hopefully Aaron Jones is healthy, but they're moving on from Patrick Taylor. If Aaron Jones is healthy, I think this is going to be his backfield. They're making some moves in their backfield. As for the Steelers, I mean, it's just whatever Kenny Pickett turns into. I think at this point, he's had, one really good game and a great matchup against the Raiders, and he's just kind of looked not so great by all the advanced metrics at Fantasy Points data. I mean, he's like probably the worst starting quarterback in the NFL by completion rate, under expectation, by catchable throws from a clean pocket. I think that's the one thing we're going to be watching with the Steelers. It'll be good for him to get Deontay Johnson back. It seems like Deontay will be full go. He's their one guy who can separate. Pickens, I think, is taking a step forward, but Deontay is definitely the separator there. So, getting Deontay back, maybe we'll see if it helps Pickett, but I think we've got to be, pretty bearish on him at this point.
Jake, if you got anything, by all means, go for it. But otherwise, we can move on and talk about our stand this week. I know you have a lean as far as Thursday night. Thursday night football is going down. That's happening. We have Jacksonville versus the Saints. What do you got for me?
Yeah, so I think there's one wide receiver in particular, and I know Graham agrees, whose props are just ridiculously mispriced for Thursday night football. I'll especially be looking at some of this alt receiving yards props, but we can talk about that more in a little bit.
All right. Well, I think that's where we're at. I mean, did I miss something here in the show sheet? I believe we're on that, are we not?
DFS. Did
I skip something?
Right.
We'll talk DFS first here.
Oh, did Brit set me up for not success? I have that. I'm going to blame that one on Brit, but we can talk DFS for sure. But all right, I'm throwing Brit under the bus. You guys want to talk this DFS slate by all means. I'm not super excited about it. We're all dealing with the same player pool for sure. It is pretty gross here, Jake. And obviously we're waiting for some injuries and stuff to develop, but on a Tuesday night, what are you seeing DFS wise that appeals to you?
Yeah, so I write the DFS First Look article, which comes out Tuesday over at fantasypoints.com. And one of the first things that jumped out to me was Jordan Love and Christian Watson against this Broncos defense. Profiles as just a really great blow-up spot. Watson at only 5,600. We know how explosive he is. The Denver Broncos have allowed the most plays of 20 or more yards of any NFL team, and the Denver Broncos are bottom 6 in pressures per game. Jordan Love playing with a great offensive line, and I've noted multiple times on shows that unpressured dropbacks are worth 63% more fantasy points than a pressured dropback. And Jordan Love isn't going to be under pressure. It may not matter a ton if he isn't that good. Because he's going to have all day to throw, and Christian Watson will probably be open downfield. So that really stood out to me. I also think Josh Jacobs profiles as a smash play against the Bears. We love targeting Jacobs in games where the Raiders are heavily favored. And, Jimmy Garoppolo looking pretty iffy. I think they could put even more usage on Jacobs' plate, and he's already top 3 in running back usage. Beyond that, I think if Jimmy Garoppolo plays, you could argue Michael Mayer is an interesting punt at just 2,700. He saw a massive increase in route share. He was locked in a pretty serious committee with Austin Hooper beforehand, but a 67% route share last week, actually had more targets than Devontae Adams. Can't bank on that going forward, but the route share will probably stick given that he is a young guy, highly touted tight end coming out of the draft. And then I got a Galaxy Brain play that I wanted to throw out there, obviously Tuesday, but Latavius Murray is a little interesting at 4,400 with Damian Harris extremely questionable, dealing with a neck injury and a concussion. I understand it's Latavius Murray. Some of Damian Harris's usage will go to James Cook, but inside the 10-yard line, Harris and Murray were earning about 80% of the Bills' carries in the backfield, and most of those should go to Latavius Murray in a game that should be a blowout against New England. Latavius Murray has multi-touchdown upside here, and he'll probably be 1% owned. Obviously, need to see how the rest of the week unfolds, but an interesting play, I thought, for Galaxy Brain people thinking about that stuff on Tuesday.
He's 4.4 on DK. The Rams guys are 4K. Zach Evans is 4K. Royce Freeman's 4K. Henderson is not even in the player pool on DK for what it's worth. If he gets some run there with the Rams. Roshan Johnson, if he gets cleared, I think it's probably the most popular option there. At 4.6 on DK.
Yeah.
But I was thinking Cooks is kind of sort of somewhat interesting, but he's probably going to be fairly popular under the assumption that Harris is going to be out. I kind of like him, spoiler alert, later on from a prize picks perspective later on in the show. If you have any thoughts on that, Graham, by all means, go for it. And did you fire off your take for DFS? I believe you did not.
Yeah. Roshan, I think, will be the mega chalk if he gets cleared. He should get cleared. That's kind of been the protocol this year, is like once those guys, get into the league's concussion protocol, they miss a game, but then they're cleared for the second game. Deontay Foreman was the lead of the split last week with Darrington Evans. It kind of went how I thought. I didn't think Foreman would just come out and just get this like blowout roll, and he didn't. It'll still be some sort of rotation, but I would imagine Roshan will be the lead of that. My favorite play on the slate right now, again, it's Tuesday, but I think this will hold the whole week, is Isaiah Pacheco at 6,100. He's one of the few that's actually consolidating touches, and he's got a really, really strong role. He was battling through a couple of injuries during the preseason. Weeks 1 through 3 was kind of in a little bit of a backfield committee with CEH and Jerick McKinnon. Last 3 weeks, though, it's been all Pacheco. He's gotten nearly 70% of the backfield XFP. We just typically don't see that from one player out of the Chiefs' backfield. It's just a really, really strong spot here for obviously for the Chiefs against the Chargers too. One of the few games where expecting some point total, some higher point total here this week, 48.5. This game would typically be like 52.5, I think, in past years. So we're seeing the books wisely kind of bump down these totals, especially with the Chiefs defense playing so much better. But yeah, that kind of also brings me back to Pacheco, good game script. And he's gotten 10 of the Chiefs' 12 carries inside the 10-yard line this season. So really strong touchdown upside. Other than that, I think this is a really, really gross slate in general. We were talking at the top, the 1 p.m. slate's pretty bad. I kind of do like Washington and the Giants, just from like a gross shootout perspective, Sam Howell's only 5,500. And I think he's been like super predictable from just like a matchup standpoint. Smashed against the Bears for 29, put up 22 against the Broncos or 21. This is a really good spot against the Giants. They're going to blitz him. He's going to take sacks, but Howell's he'll scramble and connect on a few big plays. He's also really easy to stack. Terry McLaurin, Curtis Samuel, Logan Thomas, all cheap. And then on the Giants side, I think you can just bring it back with Barkley or no bring back. I think Howell and all these dudes are cheap enough. And this 1 p.m. slate's gross enough. I think Howell makes some sense if you're doing what Jake does or playing the 1 p.m. or 1 p.m. only or afternoon only. I do like Washington a little bit.
Oh, Dean, I think you're muted.
Is that my apologies. Oh, geez, I'm just goofing it
up.
Back. Is that a mistake that I'm making by not playing the 1 p.m. slates? Because there's not a lot of specific 1 p.m. content, and everybody, all the sharps are in the main slate, and maybe that's an interesting angle. Obviously, you're talking about the games are really, really gross.
Yeah,
but,
I think it makes sense to get like different exposure if you're playing a lot, right? Like if you're just putting in 10 lineups from main, this probably doesn't apply to you. But I think it makes sense if you're trying to get a lot down, in general, because you're just going to be facing a lot of different lineups. It'll kind of smooth out variance, and especially in weeks like this, where like the 4 p.m. slate's way better, like vis-a-vis the 1 p.m. slate. I think it does make some sense.
Yeah, I think you just want to get a lot of volume down to realize your edge.
Exactly.
So I think that's a big part of it. And I also think you could argue, especially at lower stakes, that something like the 1 p.m. slate's a lot softer. No one really does like ownership projections for 1 p.m. only.
Yep.
There's like you mentioned, Dean, there's no like focused content about it. So I think there are some pretty great edges in 1 p.m. and 4 p.m. only that maybe don't exist on the main slate.
Jake, another thing that people don't really focus on, and they probably should, and they're doing it in their own little world, but not a lot of content for it. And you got to be proactive. 6 early games, 4 late games, a lot of late games to play with. And how do you do this as far as babysitting your lineup? So I'm not sure if there's somebody that makes 3 entry max, single entry guy, you're running on 150, but like based upon how your 1 o'clock lineups are doing, how do you adjust or babysit your 4 o'clock lineups? Is that something that you pay special attention to?
Generally I won't be changing, much in my 4 p.m. only lineups, even if I'm, crushing or getting crushed on 1 p.m. I'd say it's generally just, trying to fire off the best teams I can for that specific slate. Do you have anything like particular in mind for that?
I didn't frame that right. What I meant was like on a main slate where the main slate has 6 early games and 4 late games, and say like your 1 o'clock games are going nuts, they're going great, or they're doing terrible. How do you adjust accordingly as far as what's left to try to salvage? And, if you're getting crushed, maybe you can get like 10% of your buy-in back if things go well.
Yeah. So generally, I mean, if you're crushing, if things are looking good, you're just going to want to pivot to the highest projected players you can and, try to maximize your win equity. And if things are going south, you're going to want to get, really creative with, who you're playing. And I think the best slates to take advantage of that are like playoff slates. I hate to bring up spring football, but spring football slates are great too, because you have these gaps in between games where you can really dial down on, who your opponents are likely playing, where you are on the leaderboard relative to everyone else's projected minutes remaining, and make optimal swaps. In those situations, we only have a small window to make swaps on, a traditional main slate. So that's generally the hardest part, especially if you're running out a lot of teams.
Thanksgiving is the one that really,
that's
that's the time to really take advantage of it. There's typically like a half hour, an hour or so, and you can sort of backload. And if you're locked in, like you said, just pivot to the best plays, play the best plays, and come at me. And, you got to take a different angle if you're going to chase me down. Is this what we're going to talk about Thursday night, Jake? I believe we are, right?
I think we got the Ticketmaster read and then the tools, and then we will get to the Thursday night bets.
Brit. He gave me the wrong order. I'm throwing Brit underneath Jerome Bettis, throw him under the bus. It's all his fault. But yeah, let's tell you guys about Ticketmaster. If you're not aware, Ticketmaster, more memories are made when you're there for live NFL action. And when you need tickets, Ticketmaster, they got you covered. As the official marketplace of the NFL, Ticketmaster, they give you more ways to find your perfect seat. Their interactive seat map gives you 360-degree previews of your section to make sure you have the best view of those pivotal plays. And if your plans happen to change, Ticketmaster, they give you more flexibility to sell or transfer your tickets. Plus, mobile tickets, they make getting in the game on game day a breeze. You can even customize your Ticketmaster app to rep your favorite team's colors. Find tickets today, Ticketmaster.com/NFL. All right, we're gonna fire up the screen share, show off the fantasy points tool, and let's go with Graham. Are you ready? You good to go? You want to show off some offensive line, defensive line stuff for us?
Sure. Yeah. So this is the one-stop shop that you need for all data in the trenches. So what we do is we have adjusted yards before contact. It sounds fancy, but it's really not. All we're doing is taking out scrambles and throwaways. Basically, just any play that the running back was actually running with the ball. That's what we're looking at, or the quarterback was off on his own read. We also have a couple cool stats. We're tracking obviously just pressure rate. Force. We're also tracking pressure rate over expectation. That factors in a number of different angles, like time to throw. It's super important in today's NFL. Tua is getting the ball off an extremely quick rate and throwing deep. So we're adjusting for that. At the top, Jake, we've got Monday Night Football, or excuse me, Sunday Night Football, Eagles, Dolphins. Yeah, Sunday night. Eagles are in a good bounce back spot for sure. DeAndre Swift got shut down on the ground. The one matchup I wanted to talk about for main slate, though, in the rushing tool is this Bears offensive line. I don't know if I've ever seen them rank this high in our rush grade. If you take out, obviously, Eagles, Dolphins, Sunday night, they were basically have the highest rush grade on the slate. Bears run blocking has been a little better this season, but really this is just a really good spot against the Raiders front. Besides Max Crosby, there's really no one creating disruption among that front seven right now. So if we do get Roschon Johnson at 4,600, I think this is a really, really good spot for him. And I did want to note too, I think I noted in the DFS section, I like that Commanders-Giants game. Commanders also have a really good rush grade this weekend. Brian Johnson, ACD singer. Brian Robinson. He's in a little bit of a timeshare. I think he's more of just game script dependent though. And I like the Commanders to come out and have a good game offensively against the Giants. Good rush grade for their offensive line this week. Giants have really, really struggled on the ground to start this season. So I do like Brian Robinson quite a little bit.
Yeah, I really like Robinson too, especially just because this is probably a game Washington wins. He's averaging about 20 fantasy points per game in wins this year, and I think 9.5 in losses. Very win-loss sensitive.
Graham, just a quick question as far as Chicago and that, the running the advantage they looks like they have. If Tyson Bagent is the quarterback, so it looks like it's going to be like how do we quantify that? How much does that hurt? Because theoretically, I don't think there's a huge threat of Tyson Bagent the throw for 300 yards. The defense knows that. The Raiders theoretically are going to stack the box. Is that sort of baked into the numbers, or is there a way to quantify that? Or how do we know? Kind of a human element to it, I suppose.
Yeah. There's definitely a lot more human element, especially in this run game is going to be a lot different too. I mean, there's so many things that Fields does in terms of just making edge defenders think twice before crashing down. So I mean, this Bears run offense is definitely going to look different. I think just from a volume perspective, though, like the Bears know their one path to winning is trying to get the ground game going, and the Raiders have been pretty bad up front. Like I said, besides Crosby, so. I think the one thing that, maybe the efficiency won't be as good with Fields under center compared to Bagent, but volume should be there. I mean, I'm expecting Bears to come out and run it. Bagent was put in a rough spot. They're down, basically 2 scores. It felt like 10 though, the way that game was playing against the Vikings this last weekend. So yeah, he was put in a tough spot. I'm expecting them, come out and try and run it here.
Fair enough. All right. Jake, what do you want to show off to the people?
Yeah, so I will be showing off the Bcow Report. I mean, I think this is arguably the most important report overall in the Fantasy Points data suite. Easily one of my favorites. We're just going to keep it pretty simple here. Look at usage over the last 3 weeks of the season. And more. There we go. So, I mean, this is just expected fantasy points per game over the last 3 weeks. How many fantasy points would you expect an average player to score, on the specific player's workload? What stands out to me here, DeAndre Swift, RB6 in expected fantasy points per game over the last 3 weeks. I had a note before last week's slate that he's claimed about 85% of the Eagles inside the 10 snaps since week 2 when he really started to emerge here. I mean, I think the big games for Swift are certainly coming. And then Saquon Barkley in his first game back led all running backs in week 6 with 23.9 expected fantasy points. Very encouraging. I mean, you could argue that we would probably expect Saquon to fall below his expectation with the way this Giants offense is playing right now, but it's certainly encouraging to see the awesome workload. And then we're going to do one of my favorite filters. Obviously, there's a ton of ways you can, work with the Bcow Report. One of my favorite filters is just this yards to goal filter. And I like to look at red zone usage. Obviously, can also filter down inside the 10, inside the 5. A lot of customization you can do here. But I like to look at red zone usage. And I know we're going to talk about some Thursday night props a little later. And one of the things that immediately stood out to me is that over the last 3 weeks, Alvin Kamara has claimed 53% of team expected fantasy points inside the red zone. Better than Christian McCaffrey, better than Saquon Barkley, better than everyone. Kamara's usage overall is fantastic, and his red zone usage is probably a little underrated given the way things are looking right now. And then there's a guy in Rachaad White who's always popping in snap share, always popping in route share. His salary on DraftKings keeps decreasing. He's down to 5,100 now. And Graham, I'm just wondering, when is Rachaad White finally going to be a good play? Because the usage hasn't quite been there, but the snaps and routes certainly are.
Yeah, I know. I wanted to hype up Rachaad on the show. I mean, he's now down to 5,100, like you said. There are only 2 teams, Jake, in the NFL that have not given up a rushing touchdown this season. The Falcons are one of them. That was shocking to me. Maybe we can bank on a little bit of like regret. That's the big thing. I mean, it's like there's just not a whole lot of explosive plays in this run game, and we need White to get some goal line opportunities. So hopefully he gets there this weekend. Bucks are favored. This is probably one of the best spots he's had as of late. He's just had so many tough run matchups. And last week, you and I were talking about it on our show, like Rachaad was popping as like a projected value, but we were like, nah, like this is such a tough spot. Lions run defense is legit. I do think Atlanta's run defense is pretty good, but they're not as good as Detroit. That's for sure.
Yeah, no, you're definitely spot on when you say not a lot of explosive runs. I was looking through some team rushing stats earlier.
I was putting it kindly. I was putting it very kindly about Rachaad.
Tampa Bay, 0% explosive run rate this year. The only team without an explosive run. That's pretty brutal. But, at the same time, Rachaad White's still getting on the field, in the red zone. You got to think a big game will come eventually. And, maybe with another bad game this week, we'll get a sub 5K Rachaad White seeing 80% of the snaps. That would be pretty interesting from a DFS perspective.
Did I miss it? What qualifies as an explosive run?
It's 15 or more yards. That's brutal.
I was thinking 20. So nobody's
that's
for 15
brutal,
yards.
dude.
Yeah, oh my God. That's pretty brutal. Hey, can I go off script for a second? The other side of that game, Atlanta, Ritter. I think Ritter was the quarterback on the Millie Maker winning lineup last week. Some cheap pairings. London was pretty good. Pitts was all right. Even Jonnu Smith. This is a dude that wasn't passing the ball to start the season. Now back-to-back 300 yards? Is that just kind of small sample nonsense, or is this going to sort of change going forward? Do we think Ritter is somebody, I don't want to say trust, but is he usable? He's still super, super cheap. I want him in the dome. He's not in the dome. He's in Tampa. But as a general thought, Graham, it doesn't sound like I'm just asking. Is Ritter?
Yeah, I mean, yeah. I'll give credit where it's due. He played well in week 5 against Houston. He played not so hot against Washington. I mean, 47 attempts to get to 300 yards. He threw 3 picks. Rewatching that game, I think he should have thrown 5. That was to me just a volume-driven game. I think if Atlanta wants to, seriously contend in the NFC South, they've got to take a chance and maybe start Heineke at some point, because I mean, Ritter's just not. He's really played one truly good NFL game across what are we at 10 starts now, across his NFL career. And I mean, Jake is basically Desmond Ritter's number 1 hater. He's a Cincinnati Bearcat, and I don't think he's ever going to say a kind word about Ritter, but I did want to give credit where it's due. 2 weeks ago he played well. Rewatching the game last week, it was painful. That was a volume driven, get Drake London the ball in contested catch situations. At least, I will give him credit for this, Dean. At least he's throwing to his good players now. At least we're just getting targets to London and Pitts. We're getting Matt Collins the hell out of there, so that's nice.
Yeah, I'm not a big Ritter fan. I don't think he has much of a career in the NFL beyond being a backup quarterback. But it is worth noting that his 3 best games from a fantasy perspective, these 3 games over 22 DraftKings points, have all come in Atlanta's highest pass rate over expectation games And Tampa Bay so far this year has been the number one pass funnel, allowing a plus 7.7% pass rate over expectation.
That's a great point. Yeah.
So maybe you could make an argument. I mean, I think if he drops back enough, the stacks are cheap enough, the players he's throwing to are talented enough, you could certainly make an argument for him in GPPs. But really, I didn't expect, Desmond Ritter throughout all of college and throughout, his early pro games was really just a game manager. And I thought his number one skill was not turning the ball over. He seems to have shifted towards, being a lot more aggressive passing the ball. And now he's looking a bit more like Ryan Fitzpatrick, which I didn't think was in his range of outcomes at all. But also, I wouldn't put it past Arthur Smith to just do whatever he can to take the ball out of this guy's hands and, go extremely run heavy. Because I don't think Atlanta wants Desmond Ritter dropping back 35 or 40 times a game.
All right. Some early week bets from a sportsbook perspective. Brit is on vacation, but he was able to text me. He let me know what he put in the show sheets. He's a very big fan of the Rams. The Rams at home, -3 versus Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh coming back from the bye. That's his favorite pick. The NFL or Vegas is basically saying these teams are the same. They're the same. You're getting 2.5, 3 points for the home field. Rams with 3-point dogs. Brit's saying running backs don't matter. I know number 1 running back's hurt, number 2 running back's hurt, whatever. Zach Evans, Royce Freeman, sure, why not? Miles Gaskin, whatever you're throwing in there as far as the Rams. Brit likes the Rams -3. Graham, who do you have as far as an early sportsbook take?
Sure, yeah, I'm tailing Brit on Rams at 3. That one stuck out to me too. I think it makes some sense. Maybe it feels a little like too easy.
Yeah.
It really does, honestly. I will say another team I like at 3, but on the other side is Lions +3. I kind of like them straight up. I'm just going to take the points. The Lions are 6-2 against the spread as road dogs over the last 2 years. Jared Goff is playing really, really well. And, that's a team, again, without the running backs. I think Jahmyr Gibbs is going to be back, though. So that's kind of huge here. Lions getting the run game going for Goff. But Goff is playing really well. Amon-Ra St. Brown's fully healthy now, clearly, after last week's blow-up game. They're going to get Jamison Williams more involved. I think Lions are just a better team. So I'm backing the Lions at 3 here.
Jake, what do you got?
So I got a couple props for Thursday Night Football. Alvin Kamara to score a touchdown is +130 over at Caesar Sportsbook. Already touched on his outstanding red zone usage. He's also 3rd among all running backs in expected fantasy points per game inside the 10. He's 1st overall in running back usage, and he's averaging half an expected touchdown per game, which probably puts the true odds here between +100, -110. I think you're getting a pretty good deal at +130 over at Caesars. And I love Chris Olave over 59.5 receiving yards. I believe that's over at Bet Rivers. A lot of other sites are, 61, 62 right now. I think that's going to keep getting steamed as we get closer to kickoff. He's averaging 99.5 receiving yards per game in non-blowouts with a healthy Derek Carr. So that excludes week 4 where Derek Carr was hurt, week 5 where they blew out the Patriots. He's also averaging 136.3 air yards per game in those contests as well. His usage in those games, guys, better than Devontae Adams and Tyreek Hill over the full season. Absolutely insane stuff we're seeing from Olave with a healthy Carr. And I think the big games are going to follow. Alongside that, you could also look for Olave, 90+ receiving yards, 100+ receiving yards once some of those alt props go up, because I do think there's a pretty good tail on Chris Olave receiving yards.
All right, fantasy pick'em plays. That's what we're going to close out with. I went ahead and used the RotoGrinders Fantasy Pick'em and Prize Picks tool to help me kind of guide, and these are some plays I actually liked as well. So I got 3. They're all currently on Prize Picks. Tuesday night, it's a little tricky. It's kind of hard to find a lot of lines out there, but Prize Picks had this stuff posted. I got 3 overs. I know overs are for suckers, but I got Lamar Jackson over 45.5 rushing yards versus Detroit. Tua going to be pushed this week versus Philadelphia over 282.5 passing yards. Theoretically, he will be throwing for 4 quarters. Should be a high and tight game there with Philly. And then James Cook over 53.5 rushing yards versus New England. I'm guessing Harris won't play this week. Maybe he gets a little bit more. Yes, the pride of UCF, Latavius Murray might get some run as well, especially inside the 10. But I have some James Cook over 53.5. I will throw it to Graham. Some winners for the people when it comes to fantasy pick'em plays.
Yeah, so I'm actually I'm out here in Colorado, so I can't even see the boards anymore. They've completely banned me from
all.
Yeah, they can't even see. They won't even let me see the boards anymore, Jake. It's unbelievable. They're getting a lot of regulatory whatever is going on right now.
Yeah.
So,
well, you got a lot of sports books though, right? In Colorado, you got every sports book known to man out there because I was out there for a bit and I signed up for everything, got all the bonuses and you can't prize picks, you can't partake.
The bonuses, man, those sign-up bonuses are nice. Yeah, man, I gave out Olave in our betting Discord over 59.5. Love that play. I think on prize picks, you can probably pair that with Derek Carr. His overs, I think, were like 232.5. He's fully healthy now, throwing deep at the highest rate in the NFL. And the Jags have a legitimately great run defense, like a really, really good one. Bottom 5 by yards per carry allowed. And no Tyson Campbell. Jags, one of their better corners, is going to probably miss this game. He has a hamstring injury, so we're all over Olave. And I think on price picks, it'd be really sharp to pair that with an over on Derek Carr. I think you guys could tell me better, but what was Carr open at? Like 22.5, 222.5, something like that, maybe 230.5 price picks. So
I don't have
love that with
in
Olave.
front of me. Take me a second, maybe I can find it, but otherwise
239.5 on underdog right now.
Okay. That's higher than the books then. Damn.
They've been steaming a little more to overs, I've noticed on the pick'em sites.
Yeah, well, everybody bets the overs. That's why, Jake. I would be curious to know. I bet you on prize picks like 75% of the tickets are on overs most of the time, and that should be
it might be more than that.
But yeah, it should be closer to 50-50, but yeah, everybody loves the overs.
Who likes rooting for fumbles and 3-yard carries? It's not a lot. You want touchdowns. Points are fun. Offenses is fun. I never root for injuries, but like my favorite thing to happen when somebody gets hurt is like I go on Twitter and everybody is like, "Oh, this guy got hurt in the second quarter. Refund. This is BS." Oh. And it's like, what do you want the site to just pay out the over and the under? Because whoever bet the under won, they're feeling pretty good about themselves. But there's a lot of obligation. People feel like it's rigged, which is always a fun one too.
People just love the wine, Dean. I think that's really what it is. If you lose, you love the wine. That's what it is. Just lose, just take the L,
It stinks, but that's what you're signing up for when you're betting the over. That's part of the gig. That's the reason why the number is the number. All right, Jake, what do you have as far as do you have access? Do you have access to the lines? I think you do.
Yeah, right? Yeah. I'm here in Georgia, so we got all the pick'em sites, but no sports books, unfortunately. But these are over at Underdog. I got Olave over 62.5. Already covered that one. I like that up to 65.5. Think that's a really strong prop. Christian Watson over 50.5. He had a 70% air yard share last week, 50% of Green Bay's receiving yards, and they're going up against Denver, so. Feels like a pretty easy one to me. Tyreek Hill over 96.5 receiving yards. To me, especially outside of the division, Tyreek Hill double-digit receiving props are just an automatic smash the over. He's on pace to have the greatest receiving season of all time, and I think he will as long as he stays healthy. And then I got an under. Mac Jones under 195.5 passing yards. He's gone under 195 in 2 of his last 3 games. Buffalo is also the strongest schedule-adjusted defense for opposing passers, and Mac Jones carries some real benching risk in this game. So really like his under there. I think that's a little too high. I got Christian Kirk over 51.5, another Thursday night play. Kirk has gone over 51 in 4 of his last 5 games. New Orleans is particularly weak against the slot this season, and Doug Peterson, being a pretty great coach, is notorious for playing matchups. I think they feed Christian Kirk. Doesn't look like Zay Jones is going to be active for this one, so like Christian Kirk overs again.
Jake, is this the week that those that drafted Christian Watson really, really high in best ball and season long, this is the week you're pointing to? You got to get paid off now, otherwise it's never going to happen, right?
Yeah, well, I'm one of those people. I have a ton of Christian Watson exposure. I know, a lot of the advanced metrics absolutely love Christian Watson coming into the season. One of our star writers, Ryan Heath, was really hyping up Christian Watson. So I think this has got to be the week. If we don't see 20 plus DraftKings points from Watson, I'm going to be pretty disappointed, and I know my best ball teams will be too.
Yeah, he was going 35th or so. Does that sound about right in best ball by the time of the season was starting?
Yeah, he got steamed in the high 30s. He was in May. He was a great pick in May. If you're best ball grinder in May, he was going in the 50s. That was awesome. But yeah, he got steamed into the 30s. I guess he was a bad pick in the 50s too. But yeah, man, he's gonna put Christian Watson week. It's Christian Watson week. It has to be. This is the
process versus results, right? Score. Well, we'll see. This is the week that we've been playing for sure. Like theoretically, you should be able to take advantage of Denver, and also you're getting a discount in the price. It's got it baked in there. 5.6K on DK. Looks like a really, really good play. All right, we are up against the clock. We do appreciate you all listening to the Prime Points Show here, week number 7. Thanks to Brit for letting me jump in here. before we step aside and get out of here, I do want to let the people know, where can they find you? The Twitters, the social, tell them about the site. Graham, you go first.
Yeah, sure. You can find me on Twitter at Graham Barfield. As always, we have free trials available at fantasypointsdata.com. So if you're in the market playing DFS, definitely check out our data suite for free trial. Again, you'll just sign up for free, seven-day free trial, get you in there. Make sure you check that out. Mid-season, man, we got 6 weeks of data now. It's the data suite is better than it's ever been at this point. We got 6 weeks of data. Most teams have played at least 5 games. Every team's played at least 5 games, excuse me. So yeah, now's the time. Data suite, get in for free. Check it out. Get in all the tools as you're setting your DFS lineups. And I promise you'll never want to go back.
Jake?
Yeah, you can find me at Twitter at Jake Tribbey. And, I got 3 DFS articles that come out every week over at fantasypoints.com. Also do the, one of the best DFS shows around in Cashing Points every Friday night with Graham and the fantastic CEO of Fantasy Points, Scott Barrett. So yeah, I can find all my stuff over at fantasypoints.com, and definitely take advantage of the free trials over with the data suite, because stuff should not be free. This data is way too good to be free.
All right, that is it. That'll do it. Do appreciate y'all listening. Hit the like button if you guys watching us on YouTube. Like, subscribe, turn on the notifications, do all those things. Hit all the buttons. You can follow me at DFS_Almanac. That was the Prime Points Show, week number 7. For Graham, for Jake, for producer Steve, I was Dean. Brit will be back next week. Thanks for watching. We're out of here. Holla.